Before the Caliphate of Cordoba was even officially dead, various emirates started to emerge throughout Al-Andalus. Lacking a central power and legitimacy to claim, the local lords, tribal leaders, everyone who had any drop of power raised their banner and declared independence. Not many could protect it, but after the dust settled, a handful of those lords were able to carve out pieces of the former caliphate. The term Muluk al-Tawaif was originally used for Alexander's successor kingdoms, when his vast empire broke into smaller kingdoms. Tawaif means groups or factions, singular of which is Taifa. Muluk obviously means king. Tawaif also means prostitute in Urdu. I don't really know how the two can be connected. There were essentially 4 types of Tawaif. You know what, I'm just gonna say Taifa from now on. Tawaif brings back some terrible memories. So, the 4 types of Taifas are following. First of all, there were Arab taifas, based around Seville, Cordoba, Murcia, and Zaragoza. After the sack of Cordoba, Seville had rose up as the major city in the Guadalquivir area. The old dynasties of Ibn Khaldun and Ibn al-Hajjaj had lost their power in Al-Hakam II's reign and were now replaced with Banu Abbad, whose patriarch Ismail ibn Abbad had been installed as Qadi by Al-Mansur. He managed to save Seville and kept it organized during the confusion in Cordoba. The word Banu in Banu Abbad means children of, in this case the children of Abbad. Zaragoza had been ruled by the Banu Tujib since around the time of Emir Muhammad ibn Abdurrahman II. However, due to dynastic disputes, the family broke into chaos, and a man named Suleiman ibn Hud took over Zaragoza and established the Banu Hud as the rulers of Zaragoza. They claimed descent from the Arab tribe Banu Jutum. Cordoba was taken over by a council of noblemen called Juma. A man named Ibn Jawhar took the title of the leader of the Juma, or Sheikh al-Juma. He belonged to the Banu Abi Abda, a Mawali family that had served the Umayyads loyally for centuries. Cordoba became sort of like a republic, actually, something like Florence under the Medici. However, like Florence under the Medici, Banu Abi Abda were in fact in total control. Cordoba seems like the nice guy in Al-Andalus at the time. They mediated peace treaties and held a general peaceful attitude towards everyone. A good model, but like all peaceful people, they couldn't resist Seville's aggression and were taken over by them. Secondly, there were Saqaliba Taifas, based on the east coast of Iberia. Cities like Valencia and Denia were their bases. However, and here's the funny part, most of them were eunuchs, so they couldn't have children. Despite what Sir Davos suggested in the final episode of Game of Thrones, they couldn't form their own houses, so most of them were replaced after their deaths. Valencia was taken over by a grandson of Al-Mansur. He governed for like 40 years, despite the fact that he was the son of our useless old friend, Lil Sancho. Tortosa and Denia fell to the Banu Hud of Zaragoza eventually. After them, there were the old Berber Taifas, based around Toledo, Badajoz, and Albarracin. Badajoz had been taken by a Saqaliba general, but when he died, his left-hand man, Ibn al-Afdas, took over Badajoz. The Banu Afdas maintained a strong grip over Badajoz and fortified their cities to fend off Banu Abbad of Seville. The people of Toledo invited Banu Tulnun to take control of their city. They had been members of the Hawara Berbers and kept power since the time of Abdurrahman III. No one was able to tame them, not even Al-Mansur. They established a Taifa in Toledo. Another notable Hawara Berber family was the Banu Razin, who gave their name to the mountain town of Al-Barracin. Their ruler Abdul Malik ibn Razin became the longest reigning of any Taifa rulers. Finally, there were new Berber Taifas. These Berbers moved here mostly during Al-Mansur's reign and managed to secure Granada, Malaga, and Almeria. These were the Berbers who sacked Cordoba. After the sacking, they decided to do as the city folk do and settled down. The most important of these were the Banu Zidi of Granada. Their last ruler, Abdullah, actually wrote memoirs about his dynasty, and so we know quite a bit about them. There were other new Berber families here and there, but they were all short-lived. All of these taifas were eager to get some legitimacy. In the Islamic world, rulership wasn't exactly like it was with the Europeans. At this point, everyone felt like the right to rule only existed with the caliph. So no one really had the right to claim the title of Maluk or king. So naturally, they had to do what Al-Mansur had done. Some of them, especially Seville, claimed to be ruling on behalf of Hisham II, the useless son of Al-Hakam. His name is even mentioned in documents around the year 1080 CE, when he would have been over 100 years old. Around the fall of the Caliphate, there emerged some 30 taifas, but by 1080 CE, only 9 of those remained. Rest were cannibalized. Notably absent from these taifas were the Umayyads. There were many princes still lurking around, but none of them is even mentioned anywhere after 1031 CE. Secondly, there were no Muwallad taifas. There were probably two reasons for that. First, the Muwallad had been reduced in their influence very much by the Saqaliba and the Berbers. Secondly, the Muwallad were probably not written as Muwallad anymore, but just mixed with the Arabs. These taifas weren't powerful, especially in the face of the northern Christians. All of them sought alliance with them against each other. Oftentimes, they would pay money to the Christians to leave them alone and harass their neighbors instead. The Muslims were so weak by this point that when the Banu Hud sent an emissary to King Ferdinand I of Castile, he openly said that he would stop harassing the Muslims when they left Iberia and returned to North Africa. Here's something Abdullah, the emir of Banu Zidi of Granada, writes. Alfonso sent us his envoy. This was the first time we had entered into negotiations. Pedro and Suarez came to demand that we should pay his tribute. This we unanimously agreed not to do, in the belief that Alfonso could do us no possible harm as long as someone stood between us, by which I mean Banu Dhul-Nun of Toledo. I did not think that anyone would conclude a treaty with him against a Muslim. The envoy left me with nothing to show for his efforts. Ibn Ammar, the vizier of Seville, seized this opportunity. He immediately offered to strike a bargain with him and said, if you've been refused 20,000 dinars, which was the amount he had demanded as tribute, well, we are ready to give you 50,000, on condition that we conclude an arrangement with you over Granada, whereby you will give us the capital in exchange for the riches it contains. So on these terms, they concluded an agreement. They agreed to build a stronghold from which Granada could be harassed into surrender. Ibn Ammar was able to complete the building at a very considerable cost. I prepared a large army and marched against it, but was unable to achieve anything there. I regretted not having concluded a treaty with him in the first place, as he had asked. The Christians had ravaged and harassed Granada, and as if I had not suffered enough from it, Alfonso made me disperse what I had failed to pay him in the past, as a punishment for my having refused to conclude a treaty with him. The intermediary in this business was Ibn Tulnun of Toledo, who did his best to obtain money for the Christian in order to please him on the one hand, and on the other in the expectation of ruining my kingdom so that he might seize it or get his share of it. This is just one not uncommon example of Muslims helping Christians against each other. The Banu Tulnun of Toledo, for instance, had a decent alliance with Alfonso VI of Leon Castile, the same man Abdullah of Banu Zidi talks about in the previously read text. During a civil war, Alfonso had even found refuge with the Banu Tulnun. However, in 1075 CE, Yahya al-Mamun of Toledo, Alfonso's ally, was assassinated and his young son was made the ruler. His son Al-Qadir couldn't keep things in check, so he was overthrown by a rival who swore allegiance to the Taifa of Badajoz. Alfonso laid siege to Toledo, expelled the new ruler and reinstated Al-Qadir. Al-Qadir promised to pay a heavy tribute and allow Alfonso to use some of his forts. Al-Qadir was unable to control his Taifa, and so Alfonso laid siege to Toledo, deep into the heartland of Muslim Spain. By 1085 CE, Toledo had fallen. Al-Qadir was installed as the ruler of Valencia to rule it in Alfonso's name. The fall of Toledo meant that there was nothing between the Christians and the Muslims anymore. The capital of all taifas, all major cities of Al-Andalus, were now within reach for the Christians. The most shocking and confusing thing about the entire Taifa period is that the taifas, even combined, didn't have any considerable military power. Just half a century ago, Al-Mansur raised massive armies against the Christians, but for some reason there was no combined strength in the Muslim taifas now. When Seville attacked Cordoba, a major campaign, they had around 1,000 soldiers, whereas when Alfonso led a raiding mission against Zaragoza, he had around 10,000 men. It was only a matter of time before Alfonso destroyed all taifas. With the fall of Zaragoza in 1086 CE, it was obvious that external help was required to curb the Christians and their ambitions. That help would come from across the Strait of Gibraltar, from Maghreb, northwestern Africa. See you next time.